Alrighty, viewers, welcome to the School of Sensuality podcast. I'm joined by Chelsea, and the first question I'm going to ask on this podcast is how you felt when you had and when you were experiencing your low libido. Just so the viewers out there can actually relate to the feelings that happen when we do have a low libido as a woman.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I remember, and I still have it occasionally sometimes as well, but when I didn't understand and know like what was going on with me, what I really felt was broken. And it was mainly because, in the relationships I were in, it was usually my partner who would want more sex than me. That's kind of like the dynamic that ends up happening. You have one partner who wants it more than the other. And at this point in time, when I had my low libido, I was considered the one who didn't want as frequent sex. I didn't want it as much. And I would wonder why, because I cared deeply and I was very attracted to the people I was like in a relationship with at the time. So I ultimately just felt broken. I felt really, really broken. I didn't understand.
Mm. Wow, thank you for being openly sharing. And as you're speaking into like feeling broken, this also when you were in the relationships or outside of the relationship, being single as well?
No, it was mainly when I was in partnership. So for me specifically, I've kind of like a serial monogamous. I've always been like in a relationship. And then like this like point when you're in a long-term relationship for me, like I'll hit like this like 2 year mark and things start to kind of like dwindle a little bit. Like you kind of get into this routine together and just the frequency starts to go a little bit longer, slower. Things start to get a little boring. It's like all the endorphins from the first couple of years in your relationship just kind of go, right? They'll
Yeah.
kind of just go away. Whatever wool was on your eye, you're starting to see all the mistakes and not the mistakes, sorry, like the imperfections of the other person, and it kind of just affects your perception now. So, um, for me, yeah, so my libido would end up lowering at that point in the relationship. So in the beginning, it was always lusty and hot and heavy, but there just become this point where I just didn't have that craving like I used to.
Mhm. And when you noticed that you weren't having that craving, how did you navigate that process on understanding if this was a low libido, or you just maybe thought that you're just not really sexual, or how did you navigate that process?
Yeah, so that was really interesting. So if I reflect back to like over a decade ago, because this is when it was kind of more like um more alarming, I guess, because I felt broken. I didn't understand. I wanted to. I felt not only did I feel obligated, but I also felt guilty. Because the person who I was with at that time, again, I cared for them, and I wasn't being the good partner and like giving them the sex that they needed at the time, right? So I had all these like guilty, feeling broken, all this stuff, kind of like the soupy mess that I was feeling. And back then I didn't. We actually ended up breaking up. We didn't last. So this was a very long time ago. So and the sex was a big part of it. A big part of it was from his appetite and my lack thereof one. And also not only just my low libido, but maybe this kind of like lumped in together, but there was also a layer of just the confidence that I had in the bedroom. I didn't feel confident in trying new things or putting on lingerie. Like I had body image issues and things like that. So that all contributed to that though. It all kind of like played a really big part in me not being completely satisfied in my sex life and ultimately not craving it like I used to. So back then, I didn't really have the tools. So there wasn't really a lot of navigation um or coping back then. That was a very long time ago. But fast forward, that relationship ended and for obvious reasons we couldn't communicate and kind of like work through that stuff, right? So that ended. And then I met my now current partner. We've been together for almost 12 years and just like then, there's that pattern. About 2 years in, my libido started going down, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is a me thing. This
Saying
isn't
that
a him
again?
thing. You know what I mean? It's like what that saying, it's like you can change a relationship, but it's like the same person within a different face or something, right? It was kind of like the same
Like you're
thing, but I
keeping the
realized
same mistakes until you actually learn. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I made the very hard, and it's not an easy choice to like bring your eyes backward, look in the mirror, kind of like really look within and be like, okay, what is really going on inside of me for this to show up again? And that's kind of when I started to go on my own sexuality development journey because I knew I wanted to be a sexual being. I knew deep down that I liked sex, but I just wasn't enthusiastic like I used to be, for lack of a better word. And on top of that, I also wanted the deep, profound connection and heartfelt sense um, of intimacy that can be along with that. So I went on a really deep journey on discovering what that was for me. So from there, I started to just connect with my body on my own. It was a very solo journey and I'm still with my partner again. We're almost together 12 years, and I went for a deep solo journey within myself to really understand not just my libido, but just who I am as a sexual being, and that kind of was a ripple effect on understanding what I like, understanding my turn-ons, learning how to express that self, learning how to be vulnerable, because that was a really big part for me. I was always like very closed and walled up, and I didn't ever talk about my feelings, let alone have real orgasms. I would be more like performative, like ha ha ha, and it wasn't real. You know what I mean? I did that notoriously.
Think we've
So
all been there.
yeah, stop faking orgasms, please. You're only harming yourself.
Definitely. And I feel like
Yeah.
just to expand on that, so many women do fake orgasms and are faking what they're feeling in the bedroom just to show up and just to show up like they're having an orgasm. But this really leads into the man that thinking he's doing an amazing job and he's going
Hmm.
to continue. And for the woman to become more disconnected to her body because she's not actually connecting to her real feelings. And I feel
Hmm.
this really is probably one of the big causes in having a low libido because we are
Hmm.
creating these stories outside of us that this is actually happening, but it's not. So we're not actually giving time to our body for our body to actually feel what it wants. And like
Exactly.
that was going through the stage of learning what you like, learning how to connect with your body, learning um, all the ins and outs of vulnerability that we need within our own body to boost that up. So I would love you to share, do you have it? And I'll share afterwards as well. Do you have like one specific exercise that you did or you implemented to kind of start learning about yourself, learning about your body, which led you into boosting your libido?
Yes. It's with the word yes.
Okay, nice.
I actually call it the yes practice. And it is, I like to try to simplify things as much as I possibly can. So the big part of this low libido thing, like the number one reason why, for me specifically, and I've been working with women for now 5 years, and what I've discovered within them as well is the disconnect between our arousal. And I find that women specifically are only experiencing about 30% of their arousal potential. Most women don't have never even experienced or know how to experience their arousal. So I love that you're asking to kind of demonstrate this because this is the root cause. It really is. So that being said, this beautiful practice. I call it the yes practice. Essentially, it's just a matter of first, closing down your eyes, just getting in your body. However, one person would do that for themselves looks a little bit different, but slowing down your breath, bringing your awareness in your body, and it's a matter of just locating anywhere in your body. Could be in your finger, could be in your shoulder, could be in your genitals, could be in your foot, just somewhere that feels like a yes.
Mm.
And when you notice that, yes, and it could be even like maybe you have to adjust your body, maybe you have to like find a more comfortable position, whatever feels like a yes. And when you find that yes, yes, just literally saying the word yes. And when we say that, we're like, yes, it amplifies it and really just, yes, just really sinking into it. So it's so simple. And in the beginning, for a lot of women who have had a hard time with that, so for me, when I had my low libido, I didn't intuitively know that's what I was doing. This is something I developed over time. But in the beginning, you're not really going to feel anything. And that's very normal. So I want to normalize anyone who this like feels like it could be out of reach, um, to just have faith and just keep connecting with that you're part of yourself because it's just like any other practice. The more you practice it, the more it'll be felt. So when I'm doing that, just to help, like I guess maybe describe and illuminate, like when I'm connecting to this, like my pussy's pulsating, my nipples are hard, like I'm feeling that, yes. So like it is like it's something that can grow for individuals.
Mm. I love that. That's okay. That's the first one of the yes practice. And that's I have a different kind of yes practice that I teach with in my couples work, but it's definitely the yes practice is like your voice feeling in your body. So the more
Hmm.
yeses we can feel when we're coming into the bedroom or to intimate experiences, feeling what that yes feels like. And if your partner is maybe doing something that doesn't feel like a yes, then you have the right and the ability to be able to communicate and be like, my body isn't feeling this right now. My body isn't feeling a yes. Like, do I need to
Mm.
communicate that? Do I need to change position? Or how can I bring this up towards my partner because I'm not feeling this in my body? And with like
Hmm.
with noticing, and that probably leads on into uncomfortable experiences in the bedroom, but uncomfortable experiences in the bedroom also can lead into a low libido. Like I know
Mm.
I've had
Yeah.
in my younger years, I've gone through experiences, when you're a bit younger, I was just having sex because it was a thing. I didn't even know what sex was. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this thing, we have sex and we put it in and I've had sex. And literally that was just the terminology and the words that I was using. Like I had
Yeah.
sex. I didn't know how this felt. I didn't know what even connecting to my body was. I didn't know
Hmm.
feel arousal and enjoyment. It
Exactly.
was just the words of like, okay, I've done this physical activity and I've had sex, but there was no feelings. And as
Hmm.
I've gone on, the more I was connecting to my own body through just like as your voice tuning into my body. But one that I'm going to a practice that I can share for the listeners out there is self-touch and self-massage. I love
Hmm.
getting some coconut oil, getting some massage oil, putting it in your hands and just giving yourself a full body self-touch massage. And this can be really, really uncomfortable for some people if you've never experienced it before. But it's not only an act of self-love because you're actually caring for yourself. You're going to be feeling the yeses in your body. You're going to be
Exactly.
what where on your body feels comfortable to be touched, where doesn't. And if we can explore our whole body, exploring what light touches feels like,
Hmm.
it's a feeling what tight touches feels like. And is this a
Hmm.
yes in your body or is it not? And if you can explore all of these on yourself first, the more that we're actually coming into relationships, we can communicate what is a yes and what is a no coming through that self-touch within our body. And I feel like self-touch is such an underrated tool in the realm of
Yeah.
sexuality and sensuality because we like for me in my younger years, I just got into the bedroom, I was having sex. And now I often see women will just buy sex toys, go into the bedroom, they'll just flick the bead,
Hmm.
use the dildo, they'll have maybe an enjoyable experience and then they're coming out. When we
Hmm.
really prolong this experience, allowing that connection with our bodies, allowing us to feel what actually is a turn on. What are we in tune with right now? And how this
Hmm.
is more that we're tuning in, this is also going to boost that libido in the body rather than thinking like, oh, I just need to have sex because all my friends are having sex and this is what I need to do. And really embracing that experience of pleasure.
Hmm.
Mm. I would love to ask the jump into the question for well maybe introducing yourself on the work that you do with women and for a woman who is in a relationship and same for yourself she has had um that lust and the feelings at the start and as the relationship's gone on the lack of emotional connection is there is not much confidence. What would you suggest for a woman in a relationship and how she can communicate this and bring this up with her partner?
That's such a great question. And that's actually something that a lot of women navigate that are kind of bumping up against that. And so there's a couple pieces to this. So one of them is really inviting women to deeply connect with what they actually need and what their values are in their relationships. And this is super important because, one, needs are actually incredibly vulnerable. Our needs, we often stuff them down because we don't think that they're one important or valid, or a lot of women are caregivers. We're in this caregiver role, so we're constantly looking after everyone else, and then we're so disconnected from our needs. We don't know what they are, and thus we just ignore them entirely. And our needs these are the things that, especially if you're in a female to male relationship, the way our men see this, a need, they want to be able to provide these things for us. They want to be able to gift us the things that we want in our lives because they feel like champions and heroes. Like this is why we're in romantic relationship. We're really here to support each other. But so the reason why I bring that up is because it is so hard for women to communicate that. So it
Oh my
is.
goodness.
Oh, it is. And there's a couple reasons why. One big reason why is because, and I've been guilty of this too, where we just are, if they love us, they should just know, right? Like he should just know, like it's obvious. Like, of course I want to connect with him. Of course I want to, insert whatever it is because, we have these needs. But add in the layer of it being too vulnerable to speak it, we don't actually want to even say it. So it comes to the point where there's actually that the notebook, where he's like, "Well, what do you want?" She's like, "I don't know." Like it's so classic.
It is very common for a woman to not know.
Yes, and it is very much related to what we're talking about with connecting with your yes, because that yes, the more deeply you can connect to that, your desire, your longings, your wants, it's all related. Like it really allows you to feel like, okay, am I in alignment? Yes. Is this what I need? Yes. Is this not what I want? No. Like when you're connected to these sensations in our bodies, that is going to always allow us to be able to follow that yes or trust this intuitive hit or the sensation. It's all connected. So we want to relate to it often through the mind, and our needs are ultimately in our heart. They're in our pussy. Like this is where they are lying. So when we have that disconnect in in our embodiment level, not only is it just we don't know what we want, we literally just don't know what we want. So I actually have created a guide for women to help articulate their needs because, like, once they are able to identify them, now we're like, how do I say it? Because it often comes out like, oh, you're not taking out the trash. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. It becomes very accusatory, and critical. And the problem with this is that when you're coming to your partner, whom is already, wanting to connect to you, whether, you're in a resentful place with each other or not, when you come off critical and shaming and blaming, it just pushes them away. And whatever you're saying, it's like they don't hear you anymore because it's just coming off like this. So it's important to have a approach where that they can actually hear the needs that are coming out of you, and then they actually are inspired to want to do that for you. So, to kind of offer kind of like, I guess, the framework a little bit here, it is really about speaking to what you're feeling. Like really just saying, okay, I'm feeling lonely in our relationship, and what I need is more connection. And this could look like us having a weekly check-in or a weekly date night. And versus why don't you want, or I can't even think of a way to say, but versus something like you're not hanging out with me enough, or we don't have enough date night or something, right? Like, and you can literally feel it coming at you versus it coming from in here. And so your partner is able to receive it in a much more deeper way that creates more connection. So ultimately, it really is within our own vulnerability and how we articulate with that with our lover that makes these conversations that much more, I don't want to say easy because when we're vulnerable, it does feel very risky. It feels a little scary at times, but it allows for just more connection in those moments.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like we're gonna have to do a part two on this episode of navigating communication in relationships because that's a whole
Sure, yeah, yeah. It is a whole nother thing. Yes.
other thing. But coming back to the libido, I really like how you spoke from I feel XYZ. I'm really big on that. It's like speaking from the heart and speaking like I feel rather than projecting. So if anytime we notice, whether it's yourself or partner saying, you do this or you don't do that, flip it back around. Come from that space of I. And just as we were speaking then, as you're speaking about communication, also around libido, what I'd love to add in is for a woman who she'll wake up in the morning, she will take the kids to school, she will go to work, she will come home, she will make the dinner, she will go to sleep, and she'll be on repeat.
Hmm.
And so life is great, it's great to have so many things to do in life and to be giving and supporting to your family. But there will also become a point where that your stress levels are increased, you're overwhelmed, the living in the mind and everything that we have to do is also such a factor for our libido being turned off. Because if we're constantly in the doing, we're constantly on the go, we're constantly thinking of other people, is everyone else being looked after? Is my partner okay? Is my children okay? We're not actually caring and giving for our own body. And it's
Hmm.
really important, like we've already shared those two exercises of self-touch and the yes practice.
Hmm.
Giving at least 5 minutes a day to yourself. We can all have 5 minutes in bed in the morning or when we get into bed at night or in the shower, really having that time to connect to your body and noticing how your body is feeling. And just like you said, when we're
Hmm.
tapping more into the feelings, more into the heart, our body is going to become turned on so much more. Right, because
Hmm.
our body holds the score. The body is the magic potions of life, and we are both all body related. And so, the more you can actually connect with your body, your libido might just kind of naturally come back on again. And I think it's really important to try these natural, holistic exercises that we share. And I teach
Hmm.
a lot more inside my School of Sensuality, rather than thinking that, okay, I've got a low libido, I need to go to the doctors, I need to take all these supplements.
Hmm.
I need to be having tests and all of this. When before, just start looking at your internal system because anything we externally take is like a band-aid to the actual root cause.
Hmm.
You can actually
Hmm.
come to the root cause, like in anything, in the holistic way of really like, okay, what are my stress levels like? Am I having enough food and water and good nutrition? Do I have an emotionally safe relationship? Am I actually turned on in life or am I actually feeling broken? And so noticing these things of actually coming back to self rather than externally searching outside of ourselves. And I think this is
Hmm.
really underrated in the sexuality space, is we can often search outside of ourselves in
Yeah.
self-development
Yeah.
space instead of actually caring and looking in for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually four main reasons for someone to have low libido. And one of them is, stress. Like you actually spoke to it, is stress levels. Like, are you constantly living on the go? Is there some big life circumstances happening? Are you having financial difficulties? Like what's going on there? Cortisol levels. Are you doing the doom scroll on your phone constantly? Because all of that contributes. The other layer is emotional. Is there some something going on in your relationship? Was it resentment? Is there just some emotions that you're feeling in your body that are just dense that you haven't quite allowed yourself space to feel? The other one would be just trauma, like quite blankly. Is there some sexual trauma? Is there just some other bigger life events that are still really dramatically affecting you? And the other one is more psychosocial. So if you're having um, just internal subconscious blocks around your sexuality that is ultimately going to affect your also motivation. And maybe there's actually fives. The fifth reason really would be you're just not having, a satisfying sex life, meaning that the sex that you're having just isn't crave-worthy.
Mm, that's and that's such a thing, isn't it? I've been in a relationship previously and my sex drive was just not there. And we didn't have that sexual compatibility. I didn't know it really at the time, but I was like, am I asexual? Like, I was like, if there's something wrong
Exactly.
with me, I don't want to be having sex like all my friends are. Is this like, am I normal? And I was really, really questioning myself. But
Hmm.
the lack of education that I had at that time, and as I've gone on to learn, it's just because I wasn't in the right relationship. And when
Yeah.
I've come out of that dynamic, I've actually come into a relationship that's emotional safety, stable, grounded masculine, and presence. My body and my heart has opened up more. So then my
Beautiful.
body has opened up more. And I've experienced what the having a high, or not, I wouldn't say high libido, but having my libido turned back on in a way, and
Exactly.
acknowledging that it's not because I'm asexual or I don't want sex. It's because I just wasn't in the right space. And also within that, I think this also can kind of play out or add on to that thread as well. It's like we can sometimes think because we're not really sexual beings and like we can probably maybe think that we have the low libido, but a lot of women are actually sensual beings. And
Hmm.
sexual and sensual is really different. So if you are
Yes.
listening to this and thinking that maybe I have a low libido, but I enjoy massage and self-touch, potentially you're more of a sensual being and you are needing
Hmm.
more of the being fed chocolate strawberries or the coconut oil massage or your feet being tickled or the kisses on your neck to increase your libido and to start feeling turned on again over than just, let's say, missionary position and blowjobs in the bedroom. It's really
Exactly. Exactly.
noticing who you are and how you show up in your body and noticing like we were all different. Like I could just come into me now the moments like I was with about five friends and it was kind of like getting funky and that was in the space when I was in more so of like open relating. And it
Hmm.
was just like really turning to sex. And I was like, why I don't want to have sex right now. Like I'm not turned like
Hmm.
I just started like going down that negative spiral of like there's something wrong with me. Oh my God, I don't want to have sex.
Yes, exactly.
It just really come to I just wasn't in the right dynamic and I wasn't in the right space. But coming
Yeah.
into a relationship, you notice that so much more. And I feel that's very an uncomfortable thing to navigate and to look at of am I in the right relationship? And is it this
Hmm.
relationship that's kind of suffering my libido in a way, or is it actually my own self? But I think it's quite important to acknowledge, okay, how can I maybe reignite the passion in the relationship with my partner and have that emotional connection, which may allow my libido to come back on if we're more turned on to
Exactly.
our partner.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. You hit it in the nail head. Something I like to say, it's like your heart and legs will open. Like your heart will open and your legs will follow. Especially, and that's very true for women. Like, and that's mainly because the emotional aspect, it really creates a lot of safety and
Mm.
trust. And you cannot open and create the types of pleasure that we all deep down want when we're having sex without trust, because we need to ultimately surrender and be able to truly get that vulnerable within ourselves. Because it is all it's all about vulnerability. And we're ultimately feeling during sex, even we're having different feelings move through our body. And if we're not able to connect with those parts of ourselves, we're not able to open up enough to experience that type of sensation and those types of feelings moving through our body. So it all connects. There's something else you shared too, and I really wanted to touch on it, and I just can't remember what it was now though. So,
Mm.
well,
Well, you think about it. I did have a question or something I
yeah.
would share. What does we've used the word vulnerability a little bit as well, but what for someone listening who maybe doesn't understand the word vulnerability, what does vulnerability kind of mean to you, and how has vulnerability showed up in your personal life?
Yeah. So vulnerability ultimately is revealing the parts of ourselves that feel maybe risky, that feel ultimately it is really connecting deeper to our authentic self, to our truth, to our hearts, and to really speak to what's happening in our eternal experience. And it's vulnerable because no one else can see that.
Mm.
And it's these parts of ourselves that we share, um, that when we do share it, it's really revealing who we are at our core. And this ultimately helps us experience intimacy. It's like this intangible thing that we all want, but ultimately the most intimate things that we can experience with someone is when we're being vulnerable and sharing our needs, sharing our desires, sharing the who we are at our core.
Mm.
So the vulnerability aspect is what we're doing and how it feels. Like it just like something feels like it's risky. Like we're risking to show someone and revealing who we are at our core.
I love that. I love how you perfectly put that is, yeah, the feeling is like feeling risky to speak up or to communicate within that. And before my life has just got so much more open and joyful and
Hmm.
blissful since I've become so much more vulnerable. And I think,
Exactly.
working in the spaces we do around intimacy, we could I guess keep the mask on. But reality is intimacy, sexuality is vulnerable. We are in the
Hmm.
bedroom in our raw, authentic self. We are completely being seen in the mess, in the chaos, in the juices, in all of it. That is so vulnerable. And
Hmm.
it's great that we can have this and do this in the bedroom. But if we want to go to those deeper levels of intimacy, the deeper connections, that really passionate, yummy, playful sex, vulnerability starts around the around the dinner table when you're having open conversations. Vulnerability starts when you are feeling a little bit awkward or you're needing that support from your partner and we're wanting to speak out from it. I openly, I mean, my past life, I've had quite a wild life, but I've really shared vulnerably on my experiences of
Hmm. You have, yes.
how I was in a relationship and there wasn't that sexual compatibility. There was so much love, but I didn't have a libido because I wasn't in the right relationship. And then
Hmm.
like, I thought like there was something wrong with me. And just really owning this has allowed my audience and allowed the viewers to be able to notice like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm actually holding on to this as well. And it's cool to be vulnerable because when we allow ourselves to be that and to open our hearts and have a couple of tears along the way, life does blissfully get so much better as well.
Yeah, and a big reason for that is because we are just being who we are. You know,
Yeah.
at our core, there's no, like you said, there's no more masks. We're no longer hiding and like tippy-toeing around who it is we truly are.
Mhm.
And it's risky because we can't like there's no lying. Like we're no longer like typically like if you go have a conversation with a stranger, what kind of conversations do we usually have? It's like, how's the weather? Oh, what'd you do? Like what did you have for breakfast? Like it's just like it's very surface. It's very, very surface level. But when we're getting vulnerable and we have the layers of trust and we kind of like we test this. It takes time to get to these places with individuals. Like yes, we can show up vulnerably, but there's still levels to our own intimacy. We're not going to go to a stranger and tell them, "I need blah 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 blah." Like it's just like it's not appropriate. Like it's not bad or anything. It's just like what's the point? Right?
Yeah.
But anyway, there's layers and it takes time and we test to see if it's safe. Like, well, like one of the levels of intimacy, I think it's like level 3 or 4, where we'll share something like someone else's opinion, like, oh, you know what? I heard Martha Stewart likes the color of blah 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 or something. She likes to sew with this kind of, I don't know why I'm going Martha Stewart, but that just came out of here. And I don't know. So we'll use someone else's opinion, and we do that to kind of test to see if that person resonates. Are they going to accept me? Do they agree with me? Does this resonate with them? Can I belong with this person? And if they say, yeah, me too, and it's like, oh, okay, now we establish resonance. Now there's another layer of intimacy. Now I can test it with something else. And we do these little tests because it's safe,
Yeah.
right? But when we really want to get intimate and we just go to it, again, it's risky because like, you know what? I'm just going to take this leap and I'm going to tell this person that I actually find them incredibly attractive and I'm desiring something more intimate with them. Like that is like, oh, that feels good, you know what I mean? Like immediately, right? So like there's levels to it. So people can feel vulnerable in
Mm.
every risk that they take with people. So it's really and then again after you do it, you're like, ah, what a rush.
Yeah, and I actually had a moment like that this week of, when I needed to open and communicate vulnerably. And I was,
Hmm.
even myself now, with all the experience that I've got, I still felt a little bit risky. And I was like, oh, I'm a little bit nervous to communicate this, or, oh, this feels edgy. But when I did that, I was well received and the communication was amazing. And I just felt
Yeah,
so much better. And I've communicated this and I felt like an expansion in my body because I was being authentic
exactly.
and I was communicating vulnerably. And just as we were speaking through that, something I would love to share for the listeners out there
Hmm.
is we've spoken about, communication in your relationship and something maybe if that's a little bit too intimidating at the start, something that I have found in my younger years really beneficial is having a best friend that you have, like you talk about everything about, and I mean the deep dark secrets of sexuality as well. Because as we're communicating with another person, we're learning what's right and what's wrong. If we're communicating and listening to the other person's experience, and we can allow ourselves to be more vulnerable and open with a girlfriend. And your girlfriend can support you within this. You can have those chats of like, oh yeah, and your girlfriend may be able to support you into having that communication with your partner. I feel like in my younger years, that's something I lacked. Like I would, let's
Mm.
say, as I was having just sex, but I wasn't feeling anything, and I never told my friends about this. I was like, well, I just had sex, and like my friends like, oh, how was it? And I was like,
Yeah.
had sex because I didn't know. But the more that we can start getting curious and having these open conversations, then it really leads into the vulnerability, the openness, the deeper connection
Hmm.
sex, but really having that like that best friend that you just talk about everything about. And I know for us, it's really common to talk about sexuality. And it's why we're doing these podcasts and putting the content out there because there are so many women who hide behind closed doors. They've
Yeah.
never spoken about sex in their life. They would think
Yeah.
not wanting sex is completely normal. And
Yeah.
having someone to kind of bounce off to be like, yeah, maybe there's another way of being or there's another way of exploring, and how do I
Hmm.
get more of that, because there is always so much more pleasure out there.
Yeah, that's such a great point to place because one really common thing that I see for a lot of women because they don't have circles or communication about these things is that pain during sex. Like this is such a common thing that is not the way it should be, right? Like and people just they just tolerate the kind of sex that they have, which ultimately leads to unsatisfactory sex, and then thus lowers their libido. Because the greatest contributor and factor of libido is satisfaction. If you're not satisfied, I like to think of it like kind of going back to the arousal thing before. So ultimately, the figures that I've learned for women, it's about 30% of arousal is what women are experiencing in their sex life. So you can imagine it like a cake, where if we're eating a cake that is 30% baked, what's gonna happen? It's not gonna taste good, or it's gonna be upset stomach, and we're gonna learn to avoid it. The
Mhm.
same thing goes for sex. We're having 30% arousal, it's just not going to be enjoyable. It's going to be painful in some cases because we're not getting engorged in all the right places. We're not feeling good. We're not lubricated. All these sensations are not happening. And ultimately, we'll avoid it by a lower libido.
Yeah, I thank you so much for bringing that up. I really like how we've touched on the painful sex because me also in my younger years, I just thought painful sex was just normal. And I actually made a video on my other channel about
Exactly.
painful sex yesterday, so it's very fresh into my mind. Of I remember having sex, and it was so painful, and
Mm,
it just really just turned me off from wanting sex.
yep.
And I just thought this is normal. Oh, okay, I've got pain. I can't have sex until I went on to my deep dive, connecting to my body and noticing
Hmm.
where this pain was coming from and how to
Hmm.
move past that pain. And now coming into the experiences where painful sex isn't really a thing because I'm in tune with my body. So if there's any
Exactly.
listeners listening or watching out there and thinking like, okay, I've got this pain during sex. it's probably a moment to tune in with your body, tune in with your stomach space. How are you feeling? Do you need a bit of self-touch, a self-massage? Do you need to connect with your yes? Or do we need to let go of maybe trauma that we've had from uncomfortable previous experiences that we need to let go of, which is just stored in our body?
Yeah, and what's super important to note as well, like as we start to connect with our bodies more, and we've kind of like we've touched on this a few times, you start to learn the types of touch and sensation that, do feel good to you. You find your yeses, you find your turn on, you really learn what that is for yourself. And this is when you get to truly start to connect with your arousal, hopefully a little bit higher than 30%, which is definitely possible for people that continue to practice these kinds of things and learn your yeses, find your turn-ons, expand your sexual repertoire, whether it be with toys just to help you explore, whether it be with different types like sensuality, kink, more of like energy stuff, like with breath work, all these different types of sexual play that aren't just genital focus to expand what your repertoire is. And what we start to learn and we expand and really connect with our arousal, um, our pain threshold actually lowers. So a lot of women that are experiencing pain is because they're just not aroused. And
Yeah.
if they were just to take the time to learn their yeses, their turn-ons, be with their body, and then truly connecting again with the yes thing is so important because our body will tell us, if we're speaking just specifically with penetration, our body will tell us when she's ready for penetration. She literally pulsates. Yes, come on. Yes. Like it's an actual physiological reaction. And we would never know that if we didn't slow down and connect with our body in the ways that we're describing.
Amazing. I love that how you have just had the vision of really that pulsating, and it's such a
Yeah.
you know, I've had sex before when I didn't, she was like completely closed, but now you
Mhm.
do feel it when your body and your yoni is open. We feel it so much more.
Yeah, it's
How the
like
club used
throbbing, like it's
to.
throbbing.
Yeah, like you're wanting it, you're wanting more, not to thinking, okay, now I just need to show up and just to do this
hmm
physical exercise just because I have to. You can actually choose because you want to. So
Yes.
I'd love
And
to
your
do
body will tell you.
completely, completely. And it's all about listening to your body. I'd love to do
hmm
a bit of a recap on what we've covered. I'd love you shared your yes exercise. So tuning into your body of how you feel yes. Self-touch, self-massage, grabbing some coconut oil and really exploring all of your body to feel the excitement and the self-turn on, but also to feel the yeses in your body. Having a girlfriend that you can talk to and communicate with and really go on that deeper level. Healthy relationships. Are you in an emotionally safe relationship? And is your body feeling safe for you to be turned on? Very, very yummy. I think if anyone's listening
hmm
and got any questions, they can put them in the comments below or reach out to us. We love helping women in spaces of sexuality because we've done the ropes, we've had the uncomfortability, so we can help the others so they don't
Yeah.
have to navigate the same. Mm. So I'd
Yes,
love,
yes, yes.
where can we find you? I'll also pop your link
Yes.
below.
Yes, yes. Links below. And then Chelsbra. So at Chelsbra, pretty much anywhere you want to venture and find me. Instagram, I play the most.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. That was really, really insightful. And I hope that, the ladies have really taken something away on how they can now implement instead of just going to the GP or to the doctor because they're not turned on. Girl, you
hmm
can turn yourself on with your own body. Mm.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I would like to say yes, yeah, more, please. That's
Yeah,
the feeling we're going for.
I love it. I love it.